Okay, so that's a quick overview of the element of value. It's the one that mistakenly gets called shadow all the time. It's not shadow, it's light and shadow. It's both of them together. Shadow's only half of the equation. Now, you guys already did this one as a worksheet earlier or a couple weeks ago with one of the first subs, but today I want to dive in a little bit more and we're going to do another value scale today, but you're going to make this one from scratch on paper. Now, an important thing in a value scale like this, you're learning what the range of darknesses you have with a certain material. Today, you're going to be using pencil. You want to see how dark you can get it to how light you can get it. In this case, your lightest is just not making a mark. It's leaving the white of the paper. And we want to have a nice, even progression of tones between each one. They need to be the same amount different between each one. If you look at the example, there's not two that are almost exactly alike. It's a nice progression all the way across. Nice, clean difference between each one going from really dark to really light. It's not like they're all super dark until you get right to this white one and then it's a huge jump to white. It should be a subtle difference between each one, all right? Smooth gray, that's what we're looking for. But we're looking for those 7 distinct shades. You guys already did this one as a worksheet, but it's a good example of this idea of value. It's not just about like solid black, white. It's taking any mark you make, any kind of little tick mark or dot or whatever. If you start with a few of them on the lighter side and they get progressively thicker as we get away from the light, it's going to create this illusion of value, this illusion of shadow, and help give us some three-dimensionality to everything. Something they mentioned in the video is this is a really good way to decide where things are in a painting. By dropping out the color, getting rid of the red in the apple, we have a lot cleaner idea of where like the brightest highlight is, the darkest shadow is, what the texture really is, without the red being distracting. It sounds silly, like I can ignore the red, but trust me, having it this way really helps. Look, I'll show you on the next slide here. See, this is something called posterization. It's the same apple, they just turn the resolution way down, so we get this real pixelated look. But look at, you can see exactly where the darkest dark is, and it's this perfect little spot. Then the 6, then the 5, and then the 4, and then there's that bright spot where the highlight is. All that, you could literally just draw in those shapes and those spots and then shade it in with your pencil, and you're going to get a really nice, believable shadow out of it, even if it has kind of a harsh line around it. And it's a really good trick to have. It's called delineating the shadow. And we'll talk about it more as we go along. I just want you to be familiar with this concept of like, it's not a black spot and the rest is white or vice versa. It's a progression around it. Like if you were to take that value strip right here and wrap it around the apple, hopefully there'd be that same nice progression of values. Here's a really good example. This is the very first photo ever taken. It was taken out the guy who invented photography's bedroom window, out of the buildings around it. If you look around, there's no outlines on things. There's not a lot of completed shapes. There's like the idea of shapes in a few spots. What we do have is value. And that's what's giving these objects their sense of three-dimensionality of space, that distance into the background. All of that's just being created by these areas of shadow, by the differences in value. So it's creating most of the image is being made with value. This one's obviously quite a bit later on. This is Grand Central Station in New York. Those bright lights that are coming down. Let's see if I can do this. You don't see those anymore because now there's skyscrapers there that block that sunlight. So this is kind of a dead picture in a way. Like this doesn't exist anymore. The station still does, but you don't get that cool lighting effect. Look at the emphasis light has in this. The way light is really dragging across in those diagonals, forces your eyes to look around. You've got these nice bright spotlights all the way down the main walkway. It has a lot of visual power. It's not just like if a cold architectural drawing of this wouldn't have that mood, it wouldn't have that feeling. And it's just like, that's what a lot of value does, is it puts the feeling and emotion into pictures like this, where a cold line drawing is just not going to get that across. We're going to look at a few photos here because photography They can't manipulate the objects as much. We could just draw whatever we want and give it whatever emotion we want. They have to go find it, find the lighting, find these values, and take a photo of it. So, like this one here, it's just a brick sidewalk, is all it is. But the windows next to it are reflecting the sun in an interesting way, creating these interesting patterns, and that's making it more interesting. Those lights and those values is what makes it an interesting picture. Otherwise, it's just a picture of some bricks. This is the front fender and headlight of an old school car. But that's not what it's about. It's not like a picture of the car, or they'd pull back and show us the whole car. It's about how the light and shadow, in other words, the values, are playing on this really shiny surface, on the chrome, on the black paint, the real gloss black paint. It makes these interesting shapes, and the lines kind of bring our eyes through the page and stuff like that. That's what this is a photo of, is those really interesting values that bring our attention around through an image. This one's an actual drawing. And look at it. Like, if you really look at it, there's only about like 3, maybe 4 values in here. You got your bright highlights, your dark shadows, and some middle grays. But because they're nice and clearly made, they're in the right spots, you get this beautifully designed human figure. It really looks like a person. You can tell exactly what it is. And most of that is just because of where the shadows are. If you were to take all the shadows out, there's actually very little line work here. There's like a fold in the thigh and the fingers and stuff like that. But mostly it's just where those shadows are is what's giving us that third dimension. So when we were talking about contour lines going around the shape, the shadow's doing the same thing. You can see where on like the top of the thigh where that light's hitting it, there's a little bit of a contour line there that's giving us that shape of the leg. And it's the difference between the light and the shadow that's creating that line. Here's some where they're just using purely the values. Like the woman over there, there's very little of her drawing. There's very little there. But your mind wants to complete the rest of the drawing for you. So as long as you get those shadows in the right spot where our mind thinks that's correct, your brain will fill in the rest of the drawing, and you don't even have to. Just do these little bit of values, and you can let people's brains fill in the rest. It's a fun trick. It's John Singer Sargent. Really gifted painter, really good portrait artist. What I wanted you to look at in these ones is look at the backgrounds of them. It's not a super complete, like beautiful, flat black back there. It's a lot of just marks. But it's the same amount of marks all the way across. It's creating the same kind of value. That's creating contrast with the skin tone, and therefore giving it a little bit of emphasis, a little bit of that drama that contrast creates. So this is just a normal selfie. Really flat, really boring. We've all seen this kind of picture before. There's nothing that interesting about it. And that has a lot to do with the values of it. When people want to make themselves look more attractive, they get rid of a lot of shadows and stuff like that because it shows off wrinkles and flaws and stuff. But our wrinkles and our flaws are what make us who we are. They're the things that make you an individual. And they tell your story and they show a little bit more of who you are as a person. This just looks like blah anybody. But if we put in some intense values, we get something like this. Now, is the woman a lot older? Does she have a lot more serious of a look on her face? Yeah, those are all contributing factors. But look at how intense the values are. Look how deep these, like the black of the background and the black of like the shadows under the fingers and stuff are exactly the same. That's how intense that highlight light is. There's a lot of detail, but because of that, we can really see the age in her fingers, and we want to think about what this person's experience is, and we feel a little more with them. The selfie, you feel nothing. He just wants to be appreciated for being an attractive human being. Whoop-de-doo. This tells a story. This gives us some information that we really want to sink our teeth into, and you want to gaze at for a while and really feel real emotions. And that's what art's supposed to do, is make you feel something. One of my favorite selfies of all time. Now, this kid, it would be hard to make him look hardcore, but the light in this is not doing him any favors. He already doesn't have a lot of muscle definition because he's a kid. He's not supposed to. But he's definitely trying to put out that persona, that mood, that like, I am hardcore. But this soft lighting on his soft body is not going to get that idea across. We want something with a little more punch. Something like this. And that's just a normal guy. There's nothing all that intense about it. But that super harsh like it's coming down from above and lighting it and giving us these very severe lines and very severe shadows. That severe contrast makes drama. And that's what's interesting about it. That's why it looks so much more hardcore. If the little kid in the last one had this kind of lighting, he might not look so silly. Now, you might recognize this gentleman. This is Drake. But back when he was on a Canadian teen drama called Degrassi High, he was a nice kid on that show. Like, he was one of the nicer kids and stuff like that. So the photography of it, the picture they want to show of him, reflects that. They want him to look like a nice kid. They want him to seem like his character. So the lighting's a little soft. There's some shadow to it, but it's a dramatic show. It's not just a comedy. So there's a little bit of seriousness to it, a little bit of reality, but there's no edge to it. Nothing hard about it. Let's see what happens when he becomes a rapper and they want to give him a little more edge. He gets something like this. There's a lot more shadow on his face, a lot more detail. His position and where the camera's set are all helping that. Like, shooting from underneath gives the subject a real sense of power because they're up above the perspective and stuff like that. But there's some really nice values in here. Even like the stubble of his beard and stuff like that is giving his face some more definition and stuff like that. So I want you to really see how much value is affecting the emotion in these pictures, because that's what we're going to start working on, is adding a lot of shadow in. So, your assignment in your sketchbook, or piece of paper if you don't have that yet, I want you to make this value scale. 7 steps. It's going to go from white to black, and they should be nice, clean, even steps in between them. I'll put this up on Canvas so you have a reference if you need it. There's also some references up on the board up here of other times we've done this. But that's it. You're going to use pencil for it. If you have something else you want to use, like charcoal or something, that's okay. But it's the most important thing is that we have a nice, even value scale. All right. Have a good day, guys.